Mwai Jumonwal, Samajaya Coach, Nana Basnech, and everybody else that's here today. We have Daniel Kelin all the way from Honolulu, and he's done a lot of work in the Marshall Islands, and he's really excited to be sharing this play that he's written, and he wants to get people in Pohnpei's thoughts before he puts it out to the public in Hawaii and other places. Okay, so thank you all for coming, and after Daniel is done, then we'll probably have some time to ask him questions, or if you have some opinions you would like to share, he'd really appreciate that. So thank you, and without further ado,
yeah, thank you. So thank you all. Yeah, really, truly appreciate you making the time to be here. SYNOPSIS, it's really lovely that you give me the opportunity to share this with you, and especially thank you to Kenita as well for arranging this here and opening the space for each of you to be here. The piece that you're about to hear, I'm still developing, completely finished. It's intended to be a one-person show. So it'll be one man, myself, delivering everything, all the various characters that are involved with this. My goal is that there'll be a live musician that will be playing as part of this performance when I do it. And I've had a musician join me recently to start talking about it. But today I'm going to be focusing I'll be focusing on the script. I know that with time there'll be music, I know there'll be dance. Those things are not there yet, because I haven't been able to rehearse the play yet. I'm just developing. So I'm sorry that those pieces are missing, but I appreciate you spending the time on this part of it anyway. Maybe you know a little bit about this gentleman, James F. O'Connell. He was here in Pohnpei a couple hundred years ago, here in this particular area of Net. He wrote a book about his experiences, and I pulled from some of that, but I tried to play around a little bit with it as well. The play, as I do it, is taking place at a theater in the United States back in the 1840s, because he went back to the U.S., or he went to the U.S. after he was in Pohnpei, and he started performing in theaters all around the United States to tell of his adventures out here, most particularly to show off what it is that he had gained from being here, and that's an important part of this whole story. We'll hear a little bit more about that as the play goes along. 200 years ago, life was very different, as we would know, and the way that people talked about and treated each other was a little different, and I've tried not to be afraid of exploring that in the play. So there's some things that are outdated in the way that we work, but I think it's an important part of what this play tries to capture. So I'll be interested to know how you receive some of that. But most importantly, to me, this play or this story seemed to suggest that there's ways for people of different places and different times to come together. And I hope that some of that's apparent in the story. A few times in the story I'll stop a little bit to tell you a little bit about what you might see when the play is done, but for the most part I will try to stay in the story and move forward with that. Oh yes, and the last thing. I'm very fortunate that someone helped me with starting to learn about the Pohnpeian language. Last week was the first time I tried out some of that in front of an audience, and so I look forward to trying it out in front of you here today. Please forgive me as I stumble through some of it, but you're a good learning audience for me as I try this all out. All right. So the idea is, as the audience comes in, James F. O'Connell is sitting on the stage. He might start dancing a little bit while the audience is getting seated. And then when it's ready to start, pull for a brave and gallant ship, and a fast and favoring breeze, with a bully crew and a captain too, to carry me o'er the seas, to carry me o'er the seas, me boys, to me true love far away, to me true love far away. Hey, sit down! Chief is in the house, whose extraordinary adventures have been published throughout the United States and Europe. Exhibits much agility in his heels, Irish wit in his head, a rich brogue on his tongue, and a tattooed diploma on his arse. Could that be why you're here? The Dan Rice Metropolitan and Hyperdramatic Circus, stuffed inside a canvas tent in the middle of an old prison yard to see the first ever printed man on American soil. Criminals have oft been branded, but now for our modern sciences, we see that such marks reveal the criminal. Ink-stained skin is common to two lower orders of our species, the sailors and savages, two classes prone to dark deeds and ill intent. When we discover the ink-stained, we reveal a man's true nature. Maybe that's what brought you here, eh? To dare a peek at the infamous white savage? So, natives of the soil, arouse! A creature manifestly between the gorilla and the Negro is a tribe of Irish savages. They are somewhat less than civilized, having only a distant and hideous relation to humans. Is that what brought you here? To brave the danger prophesied by preachers? Ye shall not make any cuttings on your skin for the dead, nor print any marks upon you, Leviticus 19:23. It is dangerous enough to wander our streets with a constant flow of human detritus and Irish Catholics, but now you must also avert your eyes. Expectant ladies, beware. When you gaze upon the skin darkened, you will birth babes as hideously eaten as they. Beware, beware, I say. To be repulsed with elation at the mark, spot, scar, brand, taint, stain, besmirchment, disfigurement, slur, stigma, bar, sinister, bastard standing before you, that's why you're here. You missed me, didn't you? When I headlined P.T. Barnum's Freak Show, or when I performed in those biographical Broadway bemusements. Well, here, take a look. See the painted man, James F. O'Connell, the celebrated tattooed Irishman, sailor of the South Seas, engaged for his third demand performance. Startling passages of savage adventures, penetrating romance, hairbreadth escapes, heartfelt cannibalism, and exotic island beauties during his residence of 5 years in the Caroline Islands. But these handbills don't gratify, do they? Just pictures after all. Mere illustrations. Ah, but there's the rub, as the prince said. I am a human illustration. You can read my life right here, if only you could understand better than in Bonabie. Anyone here from Bonabie? Well, shall I reveal to you the amazing canvas of which I speak? The horrendously intoxicating illustrations that dared you to seek me out? Not a shriek, eh? Just the other day, two shrieked and a woman ran out covering the eyes of 4 children. One gentleman actually forced his wife, his tart, to keep staring. Warning signs once graced the doorways. Enter at your own risk. Oh, and the inhalations of surprise. So why should I reveal my painted images to you? Because that's what I am. That's who I am. It's my mark, you might say. but the markings pale in in comparison to the truth that lives beneath. Will you hear it? Now, some remark that my words lie somewhere between fact and fabrication, fabrication. If I'm given a little too sensationalism, what is it that brought you here in the first place? It's a fascinating saga, I promise. And a good book, which you can purchase for mere pennies at the completion of tonight's performance. Hey, Gene, the musician. I wish I was a bosun bowler sailor without fear. I'd man a boat and away I'd float and straight to my true love steer. Oh, do make sure you gift Gene something at the end of the performance. He's not famous like I am, eh, Gene? And straight to my true love steer, me boys, where the whales and dolphins play, where the whales and sharks are having their marks 10,000 miles away. I'd hardly shaken off the dust of my native home of Dublin when first I ever shipped out a young cabin boy aboard the Phoenix, transporting female convicts to Botany Bay. Oh, the lurching of the ship, the weeping of the crowds, the cheering of the convicts. Hip hip hooray, 3 cheers for Botany Bay. Oh, a kind of freedom surges through your vein when first you detach yourself from land. Jimmy! Skip those dull early days of yours, Jimmy! Kenan. We're waiting, Jimmy, for the South Sea beauties. George Kenan. An Irishman, also a native of Dublin. Anybody else here from Dublin? Yeah, well, you'd think that would speak to his character right off. But when first George and I met, well, Kenan was sovereign on the forecastle. Hey, sailor, the captain wants... leave off, mate! Can't you see I'm on watch? In everyone's mess and no one's watch was Kenan. Is that how you remember me, Jimmy? But with music, Kenan was unmatched in enthusiasm. It was music and dance which first brought Kenan and me together. Hey, Gene, I like to Kenan, if you please. At this moment, he does his first dance. Then blow your winds hi-ho, and roving I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the fiddle play. I'm off on the bounded main, and I won't be back again, for I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away. Ooh, that's more like Jimmy, on to the blasted savages. In about the year 1826, I, along with Kenan, escaped the confined imprisonment of the great southern continent. We shipped aboard the John Bull to cruise the Sea of Japan when whales frequent the water. Oh, hold on, Gene. If you want to hear more about whaling, drop into a pub. Find a sailor. You can't miss them. Their fingers are missing, hands scarred, the backs are scored from flogging. Tonight is no tale of whales. It's a whale of a tale. Oh, did I just hear somebody say Melville? An imitator, truly. By my book, compare. He never committed to the islands. He never changed his skin, so to speak. It doesn't matter. He'll never amount to anything. He works in a post office or something like that. I was on Broadway, or I had a home there once. Amongst the empty barrels, we carried a missionary with wife and daughter, bound for Strong's Island and the Kelin archipelago. Their intent? Bringing the known world to the poor pagans who live blinded by darkness. We will lull the savages into the light of one's everlasting soul. Oh, that last kept many of the sailors in stitches for many a night. Ooh, I'd like a little of the dark love in myself. Oh, Irish savages, eh? At 8 months out, we had taken on about 800 barrels of oils when, and were endeavoring to make Strong's Island when, at about 8 o'clock in the evening, my life got shipwrecked. Reef ho! With a well-oiled, stupid sock for a master. Keep those Orientals from sticking to the beams. Each of us followed the inclinations of our own, each of us followed the promptings of his own inclination. We grabbed ditty bags, ammunition, any little portable items. Oh, drop the trunks. Grab the Bible, my dears. We descended into the whaleboats. As I scrambled aboard one, I quickly counted 5 other seamen, plus the missionary's wife and daughter. Captain, who's there with you? He's out cold. 'Tis the missionary here and 4 hours. 4 boats. within shouting distance, floating aimlessly. Our boats kept close through the night, washed by the endless breakings of the sea, but as a rogue wave jarred us into morning, there was but one other boat discernible, faintly, drifting a long distance astern. The wind stole their voices. We trailed, hoping, the women praying, not to lose sight of them, broiling heat through the day and through the night. The sea chilled our whole frames. On the second morning, we found ourselves drifting alone. And on the third, the daughter died about 10 o'clock. The mother, so far bereft of sensibility, shot with joy, and then soon followed. We committed their bodies to the ocean. Our poor company now but 6. Here I give the name of each in remembrance of all of them. My compatriot Kelin, J. Johnson, an Englishman, Edward Bradford of Bristol, J. Thompson of Liverpool, and J. Williams of London, but of the native places of the last two I'm not completely positive. And yet another brutal night descended upon us. We slept but little in the frigid grip of the ocean's incessant waves as we felt our final moments creep up on us. Only raspy breath, dry coughs filled the... Jimmy. Jimmy. Mountains. Mountains. Reaching out to us in a wide embrace. But we struggled well past midday to fully reach the closest opening, only to hear... Oh God! Savages! Savages it is! We can't put it there! They'll kill us and worse! Hundreds of canoes broke through the trees, putting off for us. You know that old jackdaw fellow? The one without his drinking arm? He watched his entire crew get attacked. They only wanted water. They're gonna eat us. Eat us! They commenced showering stones and other missiles upon us. Oh, what's this, Jimmy? Coconuts? Are they fighting us or feeding us? Oh, God! Feeding us! We threw ourselves to the bottom of our boats. You know that time, late in the night, when you imagine someone is there, but you see nothing? Your paranoia fills the darkness, and silence only makes it worse. The silence of anticipation, the silence of expectation, the silence of realization. They rushed us, dragged us into their canoes. Bradford, swinging, towed us to the beach. Williams, shrieking. They forced us onto the beach and made us shed our salt-encrusted skins. Oh, let go of my gob, you bleeding Indian thieves! We became, as our savage captors, nearly naked themselves. Maybe they needed to prove we existed. Maybe they thought us ghost-like figures arising from the ocean. Whatever thoughts ran through their savage minds, they lowered their weapons but lost not an ounce of intensity, as if we could never be a worthy threat. They marched us through the trees, scraped and scratched at us. I felt as though I was still adrift. Eyes stared at us, a savage horde lurking behind every bush, every tree along our path, examining us, analyzing us. Two of them, H. Johnson and Williams, trembled so badly they could hardly walk. Eyes! So many eyes! I was drawn into the darkness, and I realized that, I understood that blackness was deliberate. My first thought was sorcery, but why? Why that thought? Their skins were mystical. Were these even people? Dragging us to that hut over there, fellows! Stand apace! I'll take care of the bleeding Indians! Bradford, always the defiant one, ducked into the small opening of the thatched house. An abrupt shriek rent the air. Williams leapt back. From the house came a thud like a body falling. The savages shoved Williams into the hut. A sickening, cracking sound accompanied his separation. Screaming grew in intensity. I nabbed barely a glimpse of Kelin before he too was shoved in, accompanied by those same sickening sounds. I was last thrust in. I fell tumbling through the low doorway and saw my mates, my bloody mates, sprawled across the dirt floor. I backed up quickly, but an arm cinched my neck as they shouted my mate's name. I wonder how well you believed all that. For in truth, the screams were just little children. Little children scurrying off behind their parents or whomsoever with frightened, curious eyes. Oh, and Williams, too, shrieking. And a gathered crowd who simply stared at us strangers. Their men sat cross-legged, the women on their heels, as curious as ourselves about this unintended meeting. Eyes, so many eyes. They plunked us down in the middle, a dead center of the savage gathering. And that's when we first heard that sound. A buzz of conversation ran through the assembly, each talking to his next neighbor and gesticulating vehemently, and that sound. Barbarous he goes some. When surrounded by all that is strange, how do you respond? What do you do? What can you do? Oh, I know what I'd like to be doing, Jimmy. Look around. Bare-breasted. Small parties approached our lot, their bodies bent almost double before us. They took hold of our persons very casually, men and women. Woohoo, Jimmy! Women touching me! They traced the blue veins that ran through parts of our skin and parts of the body not usually as exposed as ours were at that moment. Who knows the savage mind? Are we good for roasting? That's what the Indians are thinking, mate. No! Grabbing, pounding, fondling, pinching. Williams there kicked at them, which caused a rise in the... Stay back, you beasts! Not the women, Williams boy, not the William. Our hearts of stout have got us fame. For soon 'tis known from whence we came. I thought, why not? Where you go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. And if you dance as you sing, well then. And he jumps up and starts to dance again. Instead, the spa will drink brown ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. Forbid that no man shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Oh, Jimmy. Well, there was no loud acclamation. Anxious, peering and peeping over each other's shoulders, that there was. We are the boys that take delight in smashing the limerick lance when gliding through the street like sportsters fighting and tearing all before us. The barber's crowd suddenly surged forward. Oh dear God, it's happening! My comrades lost sight of me. Let him have it, O'Connell! Instead, the spa will drink brown ale, my mates shouting and all that, and pay the reckoning on the nail. Then one savage spread a mat, encouraged me to keep dancing, for death no man shall go to jail. And then more natives squeezed into the hut, carrying dogs, which they placed on the fire and started to roast. The Williams John fainted. From Gary Owen in glory, roasting, pounding, cutting, mixing, the building turned into a whirlwind as a feast came into existence. The dogs that met the fate that we had thought, which for us, were laid before us. Oh, dear God. Oh, and Chicao, that savage grog, Chicao, which we straightaway taste of tree bark mixed with mud, which the natives drink at every possible occasion. I could not bring myself to drink fully. Hardtack and weevily bread are a dream compared to that. Kelin tucked right in. That night we slept in the same community house, each of us having a dozen bed, perhaps I should say mat, fellows sleeping along with. It took the whole of those first days for Jay Williams to ever sleep. Kelin, however, snored the sleep of the Jigao filled. Upon our fourth or fifth day in this exotically odd land, a fleet of canoes arrived. Given the difference, as they put ashore, here landed a pride of savage chiefs. Now lined up, my poor company were made to avert our eyes and stand still. But I stole a few rebel glances to see a confident man, beaming with great purpose and teeth. That chief appeared to conduct the proceedings as he and his fellow chiefs inspected myself and my mates. Now, I knew nothing of the pagan language, of course, but as one chief pointed to Williams, I imagined thus. He is is a thin sea ghost. He shakes a lot. Maybe he thinks one of us is gonna take a bite out of him. We were not civilly introduced, so I silently titled the group, he of the taut muscles, beaming one with teeth, the tall man, but I lost count of who was who to whom, how quickly strangers are as one. The beaming teeth one, who appeared a principal chief amongst them, pointed at me often. Whatsoever he spoke, it was my good fortune to be wrangled over. I have no doubt that it was in my heels that was found the attraction. There's the one that dances there. Him with the sharp eyes. Whoa, looks pretty smart for a sea ghost. I'll take the sharp-eyed dancer then. Oh, but all the rest look like trash washed up on the shore. My gathering, my choice. Now my comrades were reluctantly appropriated by the other chiefs. Stop no manhandling, you beast! I won't be a toy to Indians! Oh, James! Don't leave me alone with any of them, James! James! I found it astonishing. The perfect peace by which, among savages, all these arrangements took place. My benefactor, or new friend, or master or friend, I don't know how he exactly considered himself at that moment. He restored to Kelin and me our ditty bags, the only property preserved from the wreck. In that bag were a knife, some odds, a shaving glass, and 2 volumes of Miss James Porter's Scottish Chiefs. Oh, God bless Miss Jane Porter. Chief Taut Muscles, he grabbed a volume and started to leaf through the book. He stopped at an image of William Wallace the Scot. Taut Muscles posed as Wallace with great imitation, causing the others to laugh. Kelin nicked the mirror from my hand and gave Chief Taut Muscles a glimpse of his imitation. The island reverberated with their guffaws. Oi! Oi! O'Connell! What's that thieving Indian over there doing? And during all that hubble-bubble, my knife was lifted. The thief was quickly dispatched upon my identification of him, and my knife summarily returned. And in all that savage civility, wouldn't you know that the first name that I learned was the least civil savage of all. That knife thief, Namadao. Namadao. This Namadao fellow seemed highly incensed at the apparent humiliation I had brought his way by pointing him out. I thought little of it at the time. After all, he stole my knife. And how could this simple Irishman conceive that such an incident would lead directly to such a deadly end? For that part of the story, you'll have to listen deeply. On the morrow, all of my comrades were taken from the island land upon which we landed, each of us in a separate way with his own chief. James! Oh, they're taking me! Don't let them take me, James! James! This Namadao knife thief yanked me into a canoe, the scoundrel. And that's how I thought of them in those early days. Bloody scoundrel. 8 or 9 hours carried Kelin and myself along with our chiefly selector to his island land. New feasting and zionizing celebrated the return of the chief to his house, and quite naturally, I danced to the best of my ability and agility, and he dances again to music. And you, my attentive audience, you just thought, dancing? How could he just leave his mates like that, the Irish savage? Won't he soon find their bones licked clean? Weren't he afraid that he'd be served up their livers when next he broke his fast? Nah, Jimmy. These gents here are thinking about all that dark loving, eh, gents? Nah, hold forth. We've not come to anything like that. Yet. Time passes easily with no morning bells or midnight reminders. It's a shipwreck that invites you to float aimlessly past time. Now, while decidedly not the first to land upon what we had originally fathomed was Ascension Island, the first probably some ship's captain who flipped by on a race around the world only to return home to spin yarns of black-skinned savages, we found that the island's curious reality was truly curious. just days at our new residence, and Kelin and myself were abruptly put upon a canoe with savages 6. Now there, amongst the paddlers, I discovered that I already had gained a measure of local fame. But of what kind of fame I wasn't quite sure. We floated along a canoe. We floated along a creek. Birds calling out to us, echoes of dogs howling, as if the whole of the place were welcoming us. An Eden it would have been if we weren't so damned in the dark as to our purpose. Oh, Jimmy, we know what's to happen. Oh, the dream in every fellow's eyes. At length we landed and entered a simple hut. A hut simple in construction but well sheltered by the trees. Our hosts remained outside. We're in the South Seas, Jimmy! Come to me, you savage beauties! 5 women strode right in. Oh, Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy! 5 intense women. Half immediately pulled Kelin to one corner and the residue I to the other. They laid us flat and held us down. Oh, Jimmy! A dream come true! One snatched my left hand, squeezing the flesh tight. Another produced a calabash of black liquid. The first dipped a little sliver of bamboo in the liquid and applied a straight black mark to my hand. A third produced a tiny rake. She dipped the rake in the black liquid, rested the implement upon the mark, and that implement, a short, flat piece of wood, to the end of which is lashed a roll of bird bone. To be precise, a row of filed points, which, with a sudden blow from a stick, she drove into my flesh. Ah! Kelin. Ah! It's a nightmare, Jimmy! Kelin lashed out like a wounded whale, which, in the surprise and agony of the moment, makes a convulsive effort to escape. I summoned all my fortitude and bore it like a martyr. One needs must when the devil drives. Between every blow, my beauty dipped the thorns in the ink and drove the thorns into my flesh. Do you know how it feels to be unexpectedly penetrated? To experience an act so violent that you literally pulsate in pain at the act, and you realize that the life you once knew will be no longer. Ah! May 40 boats cruise, may your islands be earthquake sunken. Ah! 40 boats cruise from a squadron of ships land now to catch you. Ah! Tormenting His Majesty's subjects, you blasted savages! Ah! The operators suspended their work only long enough to mimic Kelin. They were amazingly adept at imitation which they adored. They quickly learned the sailors' vernacular, repeating without knowing meaning from Kelin. Ooh, busted savages! My executioner held my hand up, squinted at the lines as a carpenter would true a board, then commenced jagging the thorns into places where she thought the mark was imperfect. The correction of the work was infinitely more painful than the first infliction. After an eternity, my hand was finished in more than one way. My savage maid smeared the blackened part with coconut oil and then patted pulverized coal upon it till there was a thick crust. The women left, taking away their tools. Oh, Jimmy. A perfect horror, Jimmy! After a one-handed meal of distraction, the afternoon brought a fresh bevy of these tender transcribers, who continued operations upon the right arm. Blasted savages! Truth! We already had marks. Those marks scar a man, made more painful by their careless application. This was a mark of acceptance, an invitation to, well, at that point I couldn't fathom. At night, we were pointed to some mats and informed that we must sleep there. We're supposed to wear those? Those garments have probably encased the limbs of at least dozens of Indians. I won't, Jimmy, I won't wear those. Oh, don't get your Irish up, Kelin. The next morning, the gout-puffed hand of the Canon of Gil Blas would not have been as circumstance and size to mine. Another squad of these brute printers followed our breakfast. Kelin was outrageous in his protestations. "You blasted savages! Oh, blasted savage! You blasted savages!" Avoidance was Kelin's religion, and his prayer was granted, though not without unequivocal expressions of disgust at his cowardice. "Blasted savage!" Imagine if Kelin had faced the other manly test. When a mate's twiddle-diddles is reduced by one, excuse the precise details, ladies. For a reason I knew nothing about, my transcribers made gestures that I must stand it. The reluctant whale not only jeered at me, but insisted to hold my flesh for the women. My skin was like a beacon compared to theirs. A ghost-like presence that crept up onto the island and under their skin. Isn't that always the way? When it fascinates you with repulsion, it gets under your skin? I was strange, and they felt compelled to get under my skin and transform me. 8 full days were occupied in the printing of the various parts of my corporation. My legs were marked, my abdomen, they even marked my back, the territory of women. My back. You see? Apologies, ladies, but the truth must out. On the delicate parts of this person, I carry the humor of my tender transcribers. What was I becoming? For maybe a month I was obliged to remain in this hut for my flesh to heal. The sole silver lining being that Kelin was compelled to remain as well. You blasted savage! Oh, a dreary month that. I never felt so confined, save when chained. Our single saving grace was the Scottish chiefs. I had nearly the whole by heart. Now Kelin made a fife, a rude fife out of a piece of cane, and a very tolerable fiddle, stringing with the fibers of the plantain tree and whale sinews from his ditty bag. But we soon tired, however, of the same notes from the same birds, the same nightly howling of the dogs, and the same dull routine of applying oil and charcoal till I resembled in skin, if not in shape, the rhinoceros. Deliverance. Well, at last, a canoe did arrive. Our saviors escorted us back to the community house, where, thus penetrated, I returned a bird of a much more diversified plumage. Canoes with chiefs and petty chiefs arrived. Beaming Teeth, my own chief as I imagined him now to be, received the guests, paying greater deference to some over others. Kelin and I were paraded at every fresh arrival. Kelin supplied the music, and I danced like mad upon every visit from strangers who broke into unsuppressed laughter of delight. The whole scene, the decorations of the canoes, the chiefs in their gala dresses, and the women with their heads dressed with flowers formed a pageant which I thought is seldom, if ever, surpassed amongst civilized nations. Those might take a lesson from the humanity of these people to the shipwrecked. I marveled at the extent of such celebrations, simply to signal that my body painting was over. But who truly knows the savage heart? Not 3 hours ashore, and I was again drawn to an empty hut, where yet another woman arrived to etch me more. Oh, but this one was a fetching etcher, I pleasantly note. Poor Kelin. With the sounds of my festivities in the background, she scribed a ring upon my right breast with calm, focused intensity. Tom Switch, another ring upon my left shoulder, absorbed in the rhythm of her breathing. 2 more upon my right arm, her artistry and glorious ritual. Skin smoothed, palate tightened, canvas caressed, the moment punctuated. Smooth, tightened, caressed, punctured. Smooth, tightened, caressed, penetrated. Are you sufficiently curious about this savagely etched man? Don't worry, it won't jump off my skin, I promise. The young boy who ran from shrieking from Mr. Barnum's show only imagined that the ink images were chasing him. I believe Mr. Barnum shared with the family an offering, a little toy from Africa, a shrunken head, if I remember. But so little reaction from all of you. The exotic has become merely a curiosity these days. Too many of you have subscribed to the guilty pleasure of having yourself privately embroidered. In fact, there might be a closet exotic sitting amongst you right now. Yeah, at this very moment thinking, are these sailors' markings as more fascinating than mine? Most likely why I got second billing under the Fiji mermaid when last I appeared for Barnum. A fishtail stitched to a dead monkey, and I got second billing. We so easily see what we want to believe. Me, I am more than just a titillating peak. Shells blared out, arresting the attention of the festive natives. Chief Beaming Teeth ascended to the center of a specially erected dais. On his right hand, they sat my fetching etcher and a line of females. On the left hand, they sat me. I tell you, those civilized could take a lesson from the humanity of these people to the shipwreck. Poor Kelin was sat at the far end of the line of males, apparently not so honored as I, a pale imitation of a man. A host of males approached our chiefly coterie, bent nearly double, bearing coconut shells of chicao with a single hand, faces lowered and turned away. Beaming Teeth launched into a speech. He gestured to me. A gush of followed, in praise of my transformation, no doubt. Then suddenly, another chiefly native, a wrinkled elder, lurched into an apparent, unexpected, anger-laced speech. The two speakers competed, while, oddly, maidens bedecked me with flowers and fancy greenery. And then that angry, wrinkled elder suddenly lurched up and waddled out of the festivities, not out of the story yet. Barbarous hic ego sum. I understood not a jot of what was going on. But what matter? Several tugged at me as they lined up carrying fancy paddles. And we danced, yes, we. A paddle was placed in my hands, and a place was made for my paddle. Maybe, I surmised, I had replaced that old wrinkled elder as a featured dancer. Now, these ornamented paddles, they grace such dances and processions. Never dipped in water, they are treasured by their owners and buried with them. Men bon be! The revelation of my new self was a grand moment. I was swept into the bosom of the island, what I had become. Men bon be! Gene! A little local tattoo, if you so to speak. Music starts. O'Connell finally whips off his shirt to reveal his tattoos. And he starts to dance. Who'd you think you are, Jimmy? I don't know, Kelin, I don't know. I stumbled. They laughed. I whacked a fellow dancer. And then I nearly collided with my fetching etcher. In the abrupt silence of the moment, I noticed she was wearing my pants. I finally discerned the meaning of these festivities. Her final penetration of me had begun the ceremony. My chiefly provider, my father-in-law, a difficult thought to comprehend in the midst of that native gathering, bestowed on me his own name, which I finally discerned, Aondo and Nitch. Nitch being our chiefdom, the island land he ruled over. I was stamped a chief, or rather engravings related to a chief. The two rings, as I much later understood, signified the names of deceased ancestors of my surprised bride. But as for the full text, my native friends remained otherwise quite mute. There was a personal to the public, a sense that one just knows one's own story. I returned the compliment by dubbing Ahondo, my new father-in-law, King George. He was, I've come to believe, more of a lower chief, though I thought him a king as a king at the time, and a king makes for a better story, don't you think? Kelin gained a wife too, and his own local name, Nalik. His woman of no rank did prove a good wife to him. Ooh, blasted savage! Sure, let's not forget that rascally fellow, bloody scoundrel. Remember him? Well, that rascal fairly scowled throughout the festivities. I was thinking maybe I'd stolen his wife as he once stole my knife. My surprise bride led me home. Abundant presents from chiefs and friends, mats, tapas, and other objects I had yet to discern their purpose followed us. With little to bestow on my wife, I presented her with a few blue beads from my ditty bag. She embraced them as if the crown jewels. I was like no other that she had met in the brief 14 years upon this earth. Always at my side, looking up to me as affectionately as ever a novel-schooled miss could, and with twice the sincerity. That first night, if I may speak more nautically, my savage wife and I intermingled our penetrations. Those civilized could take a lesson from the humanity of these people to the shipwrecked. Good old P.T., Barnum, that is, loved that I danced to reveal the tattoos. The tattooed dancing Irish sailor. And with the Bonabay people shouting, "He's a Bonabay man, and Bonabay, he's a Bonabay man." Oh, that's all Bonabay. That's all Barnum really wanted. The Irish savage overcomes the... Ah, madam. I see your hand covering that look of judgment. And sir, I can almost hear your eyes rolling up inside your head. You label my act of innocent obliviousness as the lustful nature of a sailor. Whereas I protest that it was the seduction of exoticism. Would you refuse such a life? And what you gonna do with all that time on your hands, eh, Jimmy? But you, my astute audience, you desire more than just curiosity and sensational tales. I trust you'll hear what I have to share. Launi, my wife's poetical name. At night, she whispered to me of the stories, despite my lack of language. Launi, she was as drawn to me for both my exotic nature as well as our similarity of skin. Yes, I was now as printed as them, but our similarity did not end there. My lightness of color was akin to my adoptive family. As royalty, they had long protected themselves from the sun's brutality and were the lightest skinned of the natives. In fact, I reveal to you here and now, as a sailor, I was the more dark-skinned native amongst my island family. Launi then assumed a task new to her. Instruct us of her language. What? Oh, me! You mean, me, James? James, husband? My teacher had a very critical ear. The least deviation from the pronunciation. Those civilized might take a lesson in the humanity of these people to the shipwrecks. Now, Greek maids kiss with their eyelids. The Spanish coquette with her fan from the balcony. Brits and Yanks have an honest meeting of the lips. South Sea Islanders effect a gentle, titillating, thrilling meeting of the nasal protrusion. during my long residence, my unexpected spouse presented me with 2 additional surprises. A fetching little girl and a chiefly boy. I was always losing sight of those 2, but no one ever seemed to mind. Such pint-sized playthings, such pint-sized beings are the pets and playthings of everyone. You trust yours to others. My parents rarely watched over me, itinerant circus performers both, who left me more often than they visited. Here, in this most unexpected experience of my life, I felt more apart than apart. Not the least of which, we were always escorted by an entourage. The protective, the watchful, the curious, the bored, the amused, the petters, the fearful. You're never so much an individual as you are a community. Even my father-in-law, King George, escorted us on a lengthy honeymoon. A practical joker, the king contrived to pop upon places where he knew that, although my name and fame preceded me, the residents had never seen me. He would direct me to stand outside a house. In island fashion, he would shout, "Cousin Lady Mungo," as if ready to enter. But then, he would shove me in. Invariably, the occupants, usually women, would, upon seeing me, "Ah!" and King George would, "Ha ha ha! Yeah!" and everyone would, "Now you're the butt, Jimmy!" Now, to excursions without him, my father-in-law proved very averse. So when King Kang Aramas, Amasavech, Anamasakanakan kan may wakako pan kangkalan, Nieni Mwen, Imeinda, Kesoji Pangola. Kang Aramas. You understand? He warned me against those savages next door. Yet my tattooing, speaking my relationship to Ahongalandich, was better than letters of introduction. Wherever our entourage sailed, whenever our entourage sailed near any settlement, with my mate Kenan's fife echoing through the still valleys, the native crowd would run down to the creek cheering. "Emang, Carlos Pacholi, so much Kitchener!" And when we finally met up with our old shipmates, yes, we did meet up with our mates many times. I know you secretly believed that they met with a brutal end, didn't you? Well, in truth, they did. Just not on those islands. My mates were much diverted at my treatment. "Ah, sit down, Chief is in the house!" They acted thus until my host insisted that even they, Carlos Pacholi, sit down in token of respect to Jem Soas, my chiefly nickname, alias Ahongalandich, alias James F. O'Connell, alias, well, we won't go that far back. "Hey, Carlos Pacholi, Jem Soas catch deer." Oh, I settled well into this skin. Now, as we plied the local rivers, abundant island eels slid easily out of the water and into our open ponds. My mate and I grew curious as to why we were never offered the eels, despite endless gifts of food and friendship. "Miss Saroe," came the answer. "Miss Saroe." As I understood it, this kept islanders from overfishing. Miss Saroe. Tenacious in their mouth-watering teasing, Kenan and I couldn't resist. So once, hands overflowing with eels, we slipped inside of an empty house hidden from view. "Good Lord, you have brought them to us, now let us devour them. Amen." A quick broiling, we demolished the eels with all the rectitude, with an appetite not unabated by circumstances. Stolen waters are sweetest. You ever almost worship a repast? I then returned to my 2 little native sires with all the conscious rectitude of a rogue undiscovered. "What they don't know can't hurt them, right, Jimmy?" Later that same night, a flow of islanders. We noticed a flow of islanders repairing to that same empty house. "Animan!" "But there ain't nothing in that house, Jimmy, only them eel bones." The bone fragments we had carelessly left behind. A deafening howl grew as more gathered. "Animan!" It flew from place to place and from hut to hut. on every side was weeping and despair. Animan! Now, some threw themselves upon the bones, embracing bits of them. For 2, maybe 3 days, the lamentation continued. Animan! The mourning only ceased when the chief directed the bones to be reverently buried, as if they had lost. Animan. Kelin and I esteemed it prudent to keep our own counsel. There's no hiding in such a place. Engulfed by family, friends visiting, an endless flow of people always there, watching, staring. You cannot just slip on a new skin and there you are. Then suddenly, my father-in-law proposed a journey to improve my health. My health! Suspicious, I wondered? Accusing, I felt. Who truly knows the soul of a stranger? I refused, but preparations, he said, had already been made on my behalf. I refused, and then my wife, my own wife, journeyed off with my father on my behalf. Oh, while she was out on that journey on my behalf, Launi delivered to me a leaf, a folded leaf that absurdly talks at a distance, but I could make little sense of what this world was trying to say to me. When Launi finally returned, Weddick! Oh, Weddick! No! So! Alone you left me! Weddick? He grabs those blue beads. Then appeared His Majesty himself. He has a spear in his hand. Doom! Accompanied by 3 natives all armed with spears. Doom! 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 That bloody scoundrel, Namadao, amongst them. Doom! They sat at a distance, biting their nether lips. What do you want from me? Boom! What do you want? Boom! It took all my might to hold back my impatience. She's my wife! Boom! Ah! Launi then quietly appeared. She escorted her father and the others outside. Boom, 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 boom. And from that moment, my father-in-law frustrated every attempt of mine to ever step from his sight. 2 whole years. 50, 100 it could have been. Detached from reality, you lose track of time yourself. You just lose yourself. Ahaldo became the very savage he warned me against. Consumed with this embroidered skin of his, I fathomed it an invitation, but it was more of a no person. I tell you, no civilized person could possibly content himself with a natural, unsophisticated man forever. Blunt, plain man that I am, I could hardly disguise my desire for an escape. I had to detach, cost what it might, although I feared Kelin might reveal my purpose to his poor wife. Kelin! Kiss your muscelier! What? Assez pan muscelier! Itier! Jimmy, talk human, Jimmy! Say muscelier! Ah, just come on! We borrowed a canoe, as launching my own would have aroused suspicion. Bless the communal spirit of the place. No one would mind a missing canoe. We traveled around for some while. We met our old mates. We found the new ones. But we never stayed long enough in one place to be obligated. We imagined ourselves free once again. And then one day, as we paddled in the shade of a small island, we found that it wasn't what it first appeared. We set course down a side stream, and there appeared some fantastic heapings of nature, stupendous stone ruins of a character immensely astonishing. I helloed a local fellow, Masandeume. The nervous man pointed to a square block of maybe some 20 or more tons. Mesarwe, Haniman. Haniman, he seemed to suggest, had dropped that solid, sculpted 20-ton rock from its shoulder while transporting it. The fellow hurried off. A profound Solitude settled in, not a living thing except a few birds. I wandered amongst walls, buildings, platforms. I was truly astonished at the immense size of the stone structures and of the unmistakable trace of the hand of man in their erection, broken if not hewn for the very places they occupy. Whosoever could have built such unbelievable, and he trips and falls. I discovered an underground vault. I attempted to peer into the room, but I couldn't penetrate the darkness, so I descended. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust. A single skeleton lay at the bottom, his parts scattered to and fro. Nothing marked the place. I wondered at the solitary man lying there. How do you mark life? My own ditty bag was now in tatters from the rats that scourged the island. The Scottish chiefs had long since melted away, and my mirror had been scraped clean. I no longer even had the knife that I rescued upon my first arrival. How do you mark a life? He runs his hands over his tattoos. I longed for home. Jimmy! Ah! I nearly jumped out of my skin. You disappeared, Jimmy! Leave me alone among these ruined heaps! I had, you know. Jumped out of my skin, that is. Jimmy, let's go! This place makes my skin crawl! We set the head of our canoe for home. Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo! The moment he spied our return, that rascally, bloody scoundrel, evidently on the watch for any discrepancy in my actions, shoved off in his canoe. His long-ago humiliation at my hands never seemed to be far from his thoughts or actions. Ooh, ooh! He paddled like a windmill in a gale. In just moments there appeared from outside the bay the canoes of a houndel in pursuit of us. We cracked on. Yet a houndel's canoe at length pulled alongside of us, but it was bloody scoundrel that first lay hold of our outrigger, endeavoring to capsize Kelin and me. His long-ago humiliation boiled over. Oops. Ipan tera sang Kelin, any souch, Wepan will be pop mekot. The rascal bloody scoundrel reached over to gouge at my chest, as if to rip from me my very place in this place. I administered a settler with my fist, knocking him into the water. Half a dozen others then laid a hold of our outrigger. Even my namesake, Aondo, made frequent feints with his spear. Kelin and I leapt out of the canoe. Ahandel's men commenced beating me with the flat side of the paddles. Kelin was allowed to climb onto another vessel, but though I made several attempts to climb aboard Ahandel's canoe, bloody scoundrel rapped at my fingers, and my father-in-law, Kesakanakan, Sochemelel, Aswet, Ibuke Kongwe, and young Dodonki Ahiahandu, Nimweim, Ehipanelim, Alke Soche Melaloye, Ke Soche Wegesam, Aramasakan, making Kokoseli Namwe. Well, my attentive audience, I've left you out linguistically, although I imagine you've gotten along, decently intelligent folks that you are. This last bears full translation. Cruel, dishonest, ungracious. I invited you to share my name, my house, my family, but you're dishonest, no better than a savage who cares not a whit for others. I had convinced myself the tattoos invited me in, but I realized that I had never earned them. Jim Tomas, honored chief, was allowed to crawl into a slave's canoe to return to his father's house. I could not help but acknowledge to myself that my punishment was not altogether undeserved. Barbarous hic ego sum. Here, I am a barbarian. Launi sought me out directly. She wept tears of joy and pressed her nose against mine. Her joy quickly turned to rage at that rascal, bloody scoundrel. Tekavele, Ahiberic James, Udan ke Sakanakan. He died some 2 months later. It was attributed to injury, but also shame at being punished by a woman. He felt the shame of defeat, while I felt the regret of triumph. My good audience, I upset the way he believed that life should be, which drove him to distraction. I said how communal the island is. None there withholds possessions from the needy. Why otherwise, when you can obtain any island commodity in abundance? The people there, my friends, my family, are so often labeled thieves by outsiders, when the act is more of a communal one. That bloody scoundrel, that Namadao, to speak his true name, had once briefly taken my knife. What if I had just taken it back when I needed it? When next my father-in-law spoke to me, you faced the fear of you. I wonder if he simply pitied this transfigured creature or was truly impressed by my actions. Or maybe it was that a neighboring chief, Lashayan declared war against Aungel and Nitch. You recall that one I called Wrinkled Elder who stormed out of my wedding? Well, apparently Lowney had been promised in marriage to him. Now, it may have been Lowney's disgust at that union, so much as to the cut of my jib, that I owed my marriage to her. But she had stood up for me. Aungel had asked me to stand up for the family. As a native of a country whose boys have no decided aversion to a bit of a row, I consented. Kelin showed the white feather. How's this our fight, Jimmy? Ooh, busted savage. Now, this weren't like any row I ever fought. Music begins. Heads garlanded with flowers, bodies oiled to an imposing shine. We began with a promise between them and us, ensuring that we were evenly prepared, evenly matched, evenly outfitted. We launched. Stones hurled, canoes ran, hand to hand we battled, from our vessels, from the water. We charged side by side, seizing others by the hair. War clubs shattered the very air. We disputed every inch of ground to the very door of Wijayanu's home, to thrust with wooden spears. Wijayanu lay at the threshold, silenced. A shout of joy and opposing murmur of grief suspended the battle. We gathered the dead, ours, theirs, and Wijayanu. As we returned home, the lamentation sounded as if we had suffered the defeat instead of the victory. Wijayanu was laid out, his heart removed, presented to the chiefs. Imam, Karos Pachodi, Jem Somas Kechdir. To eat the heart honors the brave dead enemy. An act to cement reconciliation. But you said you wasn't there, Jimmy. Jimmy! You said you wasn't at that disgusting ritual, was you, Jimmy? He grabs a bell and rings it. Sunrise, 1833. Kelin and I ran to the top of the nearest hill. There we witnessed the arrival of the vessel in which we left Monby. What flag does she fly, Kelin? Who cares, Jimmy? We're finally leaving, I called upon my father with all speed. King George! King George! Swoop loud! On. Whistle. Kelin, Jem Somas, whistle. Whistle! So! Kodo! Kelin and I bounded off, as if our feet could not serve us fast enough. Wedek. The only sound that could stop me. Wedek. He? Lowney stood as if expecting me to speak. Lowney? She anxiously studied the expression on my face. Jimmy, the ship! Kelin, awi! Lowney? My father-in-law spoke. Udang ke pokeng Lowney? Hey! Numseri? Hey! Jimmy, our prayers have been answered! What cause did he have to ask about Lowney and the children? Udang ke pokeng kitchene ni malam? Hey! Gratitude spread across my wife's countenance. Time to be human again, Jimmy! The whole household accompanied Kelin and me as we prepared to launch. I avoided looking at Lowney, who stood mostly quiet throughout the preparations. Medic? bit of melancholy tinged her eyes. Ano kay inokida? Me kay pamporodo? Kay inokida? Will I promise? Why are you waiting, Jimmy? It's our chance now, Jimmy! I faced my first true choice in a long time. Would there be another? Maybe our last chance ever, Jimmy. Wait. Kay inokida? Jimmy, time to go home. Laumi placed her hand upon my... She walked off with our father and children. I nearly exposed my unexpected grief. A fleet of some dozen canoes, excuse me, filled with friends and comrades escorted us. When we reached the schooner, she was hove to, the men mustered with boarding pikes and muskets in hand. We passed under her stern. I read the name, Spy of Salem. Casino! Civilized! Jimmy! Oh, throw us a rope, will you? Captain! These savages speak English! There was a bustle on deck, a buzz of shock, but no answer. A rope then appeared over the side. The captain was much surprised at our appearance. Just keep the other savages in the canoe. By my friends, I sent my father a large broad axe and my wife beads and other trinkets. Captain Knight, let our vessel lay here a month or 6 weeks. There's an abundance of tortoise shell and bête de mer for commerce, and yam, breadfruit, water, and wood for provision. And the savages? Oh, my friends are peaceable. Captain Knight purchased the canoe through me as an interpreter, which he proposed to carry off as a curiosity. Some of the locals slipped into it, and before we were aware, sailed off with it. These savages will take this vessel too, men! No, Captain. Captain, any harsh treatment might cause the event you dread. Captain Knight fired upon them. We can easily get them to return. He then blowed out the brains of a native climbing in the cabin. Threw out the body. Taunted not by such death, fleet after fleet of canoes put off for us. Get underway, men, and fire upon any savage you see! A small swivel was hoisted up to the foretop, charged with nails, slugs, and musket balls. Come on, get away! You two, native lovers, take arms! This ain't our fight, eh, Jimmy? Captain Knight, desperate, sent a match to the foretop. Set us ashore again rather than purchase our freedom by such an abuse of our friends. I ain't going back, Jimmy. The captain collared me. By all that's holy, I'll flay the savage skin right off of you and do the superior race a true service. I returned his grasp with interest. I will report your abuse of my friends at Bonaparte. The charge of the swivel hit amongst the thickest of the fleet. Several island mates dropped like dogs over the sides of their canoes, still bodies adrift. Abras hikigo sam. Nothing of my life caused me such great illness as the butchery of my friends. Let us gather up the dead. I ain't going back, Jimmy. The winds carried us further and further, as I imagined lamentations for those so cruelly slain echoing across the waters. Kelin played in remembrance or tribute I know not. Thus ends that story. I had set off but a child to make my mark upon the world. I discovered that in truth the world makes its mark upon you. He picks up handbills. Scum unloaded on American wars are the Irish, and he sticks it to his body. The celebrated tattooed man, he sticks it to his body. So long as we are overwhelmed with Irish immigrants, so long will evil abound, he sticks it to his body. Whose astonishing performances have commended the wonder and applause of every audience, he sticks it to his body. This would be a great land if only every Irishman would kill a Negro and be hanged for it, he sticks it to his body. And who presents as romantic adventures as can well be imagined, and he sticks it to his body. But such outward marks merely map your life. what's ingrained underneath defines you. I'll leave you with this. While still back in Bonabie, I went upon some excursion and carelessly left Miss Jane Porter's Scottish chiefs exposed. When I returned, all of the book's pages had been ripped out and sewn into blankets, under which a half a dozen women strut about with all the pride of peacocks. They imagined themselves bedecked in the white man's tattoo. Their gratification soon turned to vexation, however. The Jane Porter bedecked belles were surprised in a shower. The English tattoos washed off. "Blasted savages," the ladies defiantly sang. "White man's tattoo will not last. Bonabie is you forever." Well, I trust I have satisfied your curiosity and more. "Hey, Jimmy, you ain't done yet?" Oh, Keenan. Well, Keenan, he didn't make it back. Cholera. But you, my attentive audience, you justly wish to know, what about that promise? Okay, look it up. Well, what would you have me do? Truly. As you exit the tent, please, don't forget about Jean over here. Thank you. Truly, truly thank you. I appreciate that, there's a lot here to digest, a lot of information to go through, but if anybody, there's a...
Yes, there's coffee and snacks.
There's snacks and one over there, so if you would like to take a breather and to have a snack, feel free to jump in there and have something. If you have a thought or a question that you'd like to share or ask of me, I'm exceedingly happy to hear from you or to share with you. I love any thoughts that you might send my way, so feel free to make the choice that works for you. If you need a little bit of a break, I love it. If you have a thought to share with me, I love it. Whichever way works for you. Thank you.
What were your title? What was your title?
The title is Shipwrecked on the Body Beautiful.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Aundel
Aundel and Nicht.
Oh, that's a good title.
It's a good title? That's what he says he lived with, was that gentleman here on this part.
Does that title still exist today? Is it still used?
Online.